One other senator worth keeping an eye on is this guy, Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin. Prior to joining the Senate, Markwayne Mullin served in the House of Representatives alongside Matt Gaetz, and you will be shocked to learn that Matt Gaetz did not endear himself to Markwayne Mullin. Gaetz has called Mullin a disgrace to the Republican Party, and Mullin has shared some pretty unflattering anecdotes about Matt Gaetz, like this one from last year.
This is a guy that the media didn't give a time of day to after he was accused of sleeping with an underage girl. And there's a reason why no one in the conference came and defended him, because we had all seen the videos he was showing on the House floor that all of us had walked away of the girls that he had slept with. He'd brag about how he would crush ED medicine and chase it with an energy drink so he could go all night. This is obviously before he got married. And so when that accusation came out, no one defended him.
That was how Markwayne Mullin talked about Matt Gaetz a year ago. But this week, President-elect Trump has turned up the pressure on senators like Markwayne Mullin. On Monday, Trump posted a glowing message about Senator Mullin on his social media site, calling him a great fighter, while also reminding Senator Mullin that Trump won every district in Mullin's home state of Oklahoma. Trump concluded the message by saying Mullin is taking really good care of that very special state, and I'm there watching over it. Yesterday, after that less than subtle message from the leader of his party, here was Markwayne Mullin on the Gaetz nomination.
I think the president wants a hammer at the DOJ, and he sees Matt Gaetz as a hammer and all these other appointments. He's very confident in where they're at and can deliver the administration that he's wanting. His picks have been maybe unconventional, but we hired an unconventional president, and the American people wanted that. They don't want politics as usual. They want someone that's going to shake up Washington, D.C.
He's a hammer. He's unconventional. It is a radically more generous assessment of Matt Gaetz than anything Markwayne Mullin has said before. I wonder why. Today, Matt Gaetz was on Capitol Hill to meet with Republican senators, where he was escorted by the president's second in command, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance.
The senator's been giving me a lot of good advice. I'm looking forward to a hearing. Folks have been very supportive. They've been saying we're going to get a fair process. So it's a great day of momentum for the Trump-Vance administration.
To put some great perspective on all of this is my friend and former colleague, John Heilman, who is a columnist and podcaster for Puck News and a great American. John, what does this feel like to you as you watch these, you hear the sound of people like Kevin Cramer and Markwayne Mullin, people who've been out there in the past saying Matt Gaetz is effectively not a good guy, which is being maybe euphemistic, and now kind of saying, well, but he's a hammer, he's a maverick, he's a guy that can get it done for Trump. How do you read it?
A few years ago on a television show called The Circus that we hosted together, we covered the Brett Kavanaugh nomination.
Yeah.
And I remember very vividly going up to, in the closing days of that, flying up to New Hampshire and spending some time with you, chasing Susan Collins around. And the sound of Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, others, at that time Jeff Flake, expressing deep concern, grave concerns, real serious concerns. And then them going out and voting for the nominee anyway. That's what the sense memory is that, and the PTSD is that, which is that, you could be cynical and sort of say, a moment when Susan Collins announces she's deeply concerned about something, she's quite likely to overcome those concerns in the end and vote for the person, do the thing that she's concerned about. I have sat here for the last, since last Wednesday, when the immediate reaction of a lot of people was these three nominees, Gabbard, Gaetz, and Hegseth, but obviously particularly Gaetz, are unconfirmable. They are unconfirmable. They will never get confirmed. I have spent the time since then in vain searching for someone who can point to an example when the Republicans in the United States Senate have ever stood up to legitimate hardcore pressure from Donald Trump. I'm still waiting. If someone has an example that I've forgotten,
totally.
On a recorded vote, there have been occasionally on some foreign policy things when someone has pressured Trump on something, McConnell on Ukraine or whatever, but on a recorded vote where Donald Trump has come out and said, I want this, I need this, and if I don't get this, I'm going to give you all my pressure, the positive pressure, please, please, please do this, and then eventually we'll get to the threat. you read that Truth Social post about Senator Mullen. We're going to hear a lot more about that,
Yeah.
and start taking a look at all the United States senators who are up in the classes of 2026 and the class of 2028. All of those people have been terrified of Donald Trump's sway over his base and their electorates from the moment he became the Republican nominee in 2016.
Yeah.
What has changed? He is now a more powerful force in the Republican Party than he was then. I don't understand the logic by which, other than rationality, other than like, why would you vote against these nominees? Why would you vote against Matt Gaetz? For all the obvious reasons, but I don't think it's at all a guarantee that any of them are going to vote against Matt Gaetz in the end, regardless of what's in this ethics committee report.
Yeah, and I will say, like, that is not to give those Republicans a pass.
No,
We did it before,
quite the contrary.
Because we're not talking about Brett Kavanaugh here. We're talking about Matt Gaetz, who is a different animal entirely in terms of politics, not just in terms
100%.
of the sexual assault allegations in the swirl, but also what he represents in terms of dismantling the federal government and weaponizing the Justice Department. Given that, John, so we had Allie on talking about the back and forth in the House Ethics Committee. There's this report that has this damaging, potentially explosive material in it. A Democrat on the House Ethics Committee could go to the floor of the House and enter it into the public record. Right. It would be a breach of protocol like we've never seen before, but it is allowed, and it would put it in the public eye. And I sort of understand why Democrats see themselves as the guardrails and the ones protecting institutional integrity, but we're also talking about Matt Gaetz at the Department of Justice. Do you see any way in which Democrats start playing a different kind of baseball in this moment?
Well, I think I think that it's as much about there is a decorum and precedent and institutional humana, but really what it's about is fear. And Democrats are, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, afraid that if they get into the ring, it's you don't want to get down in the mud with the pig because, you get dirty and the pig likes it. It's the same thing. They have that same attitude, which is they're a little afraid to play that kind of brass knuckle politics because they think they're a little worried that they'll get beat up. And they've seen Republicans do this for so long. They think they're better at it. They're tougher. They're meaner. They're less scrupulous.
Yes.
They're more willing to break the rules. They're more willing to bite and pull hair and do whatever they need to do. So there's a little bit of that fear. I just have to say that I think the most important two things to say about this whole thing that people have to just keep remembering over and over again. When people say that these nominees are not qualified, they are perfectly qualified for what they are being put in there for. They are being put in there not to run these departments, but to wreck these departments by the standards of what Donald Trump and Steve Bannon and others are trying to do. Deconstruct the administrative state. Steve Bannon's out in the New York Times tonight. Donald Trump is a blunt force instrument applying blunt force trauma to the system. They want to destroy the system, not to build. So they're very well qualified for that. You got to think about that. And the other thing is this is all about the thing that Lisa Murkowski put her finger on. She understands Donald Trump wants the Senate to be the Duma. He wants it to be a rubber stamp institution that will give him what he wants whenever he wants it. And that is what this is about. This has been about humiliating the Senate and forcing it to do things it doesn't want to do so that he can ultimately say, you're now mine.
Yeah, and that's why it matters who is our Attorney General.
Of course.
It matters about the ethics. But really what this is a bellwether for the rest of the Trump administration and the degree to which the legislative branch, it is a low-key constitutional crisis. Can we take your responsibility to advise and consent, Senate? Give it to me. That's what Trump's saying. That's exactly what he's saying. And just keep in mind, there are all kinds of lawyers who share the deconstruct the administrative state view that if Matt Gaetz were to go down, you will get a less objectionable, less heinous, less grotesque, less morally repugnant version of Matt Gaetz. Someone but has the same goal, will be the same instrument of Donald Trump, which is to weaponize the Justice Department, tear down the rule of law. That's going to be the Attorney General. It's just a question of whether you also get one who is, whether you also have to get stuck with one who's apparently in favor of having sexual intercourse with women who are either underage or right on the edge of being underage. And I like those things. Fail me.
Just take a look at those things you guys had up earlier. Some of those notations of what those payments were for. Yes. One of them is noted as joy. Oh. I just can't even comment. I'm going to leave that one for the commercial break. So gross.
John Heilman, thank you for your time.
Sure. Happy to be here.